Ever get like a text message from a number and you just know, like deep down, it belongs to someone who's passed away? It's like the shiver right down your spine.
Yeah.
That feeling, that kind of clash between like the tech world and something, I don't know, spectral. That's what we're getting into today. Digital hauntings.
Mm.
We're talking about those phantom calls, the voices you hear in recordings, even those weird figures that pop up in pictures or videos. It's all a bit, well, modern and macabre. We got some really wild cases to unpack today, but before we get into the thick of it, maybe we should set the scene a bit.
Absolutely. I think it's really important to remember that with digital hauntings, we're not just talking about spooky tech, right?
Yeah.
It goes deeper. These stories, they kind of dig into our deepest anxieties about death, about grief. And it makes you think about our relationship with technology. Our phones, computers, even our homes are so intertwined with our lives now.
Right? It's like these devices, they're almost like extensions of us at this point. So when you see something on your phone, something you can't explain, especially if it seems connected to someone you've lost, it's no wonder our minds go straight to the supernatural, right?
Exactly. And that's where things get really interesting, because while some digital hauntings, you can chalk them up to just normal tech glitches, like a delayed text, a bug in the system, even a case of mistaken identity. Some cases, they just defy simple explanations.
Right, so sometimes, like, a glitch is just a glitch. But then you hear about cases like that family, I think they were in Pennsylvania, who claimed their smart home system, the one that controls all the lights and stuff, well, they said it started relaying messages that sounded like they were from a dead relative.
Yeah, and these cases really highlight how difficult it can be to tell the difference between something truly strange and maybe a hoax or even just a misinterpretation, especially because the internet has a way of amplifying these stories, making them seem even bigger. And grief, like you said, it can really distort how we see things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But then you have those stories that are just harder to brush off.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, have you ever heard of EVPs? It stands for electronic voice phenomenon. And it's this whole thing where people believe spirits can actually use recordings to communicate.
Mm-hmm.
It used to be, you'd only hear about EVPs with like those old spooky tape recorders. But now people are picking up these unexplained voices on their phones, on their computers, even through their smart home devices.
Yeah, it's a phenomenon that's been around for ages, well before smartphones and all that. But it's interesting how this digital technology we have now makes these experiences, it makes them feel closer, more real, especially for people who grew up with the internet.
It's like the line between like us, the living, and the digital world that's getting thinner. And speaking of the internet, you can't talk about digital hauntings without bringing up creepypasta. Are you familiar with that at all?
Oh, for sure. For those who maybe haven't heard of it, creepypastas are basically online horror stories. Usually short, pretty unsettling, shared around the internet. And they often involve tech and the supernatural.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like digital folklore. And a lot of them play on those same anxieties and fears that make us so drawn to digital hauntings. And some of them, they're actually inspired by real-world cases, which makes it so hard to separate what's real from what's made up. Like that story, the Twitter ghost. Have you heard that one?
That one really took the internet by storm for a while.
Oh, I know. It's about that writer, right? They pass away.
Right.
And then years later, their Twitter account, it like comes back to life.
Yeah.
Posting brand new stuff. Like they were still around. It's like their digital ghost took over or something.
It's definitely a story that grabs you, makes you think about what happens to, our digital selves after we're gone.
Seriously. How do you even begin to explain something like that?
Well, as captivating as the whole ghost in the machine idea is, we do have to consider other possibilities. Could they have set up like scheduled posts ahead of time, maybe years in advance? Or is there a chance someone else had access to the account, maybe a family member or something, and decided to post on their behalf?
True. Someone else having access. That's always possible. But scheduling tweets that far in advance, that seems, I don't know,
Yeah.
a bit of a stretch.
It does, and I think that's what makes these cases so fascinating. They sit right at this intersection of tech, grief, and that very human need to make sense of things we just can't explain.
Totally. Like even if there's a perfectly logical explanation, that little voice in the back of your head, that seed of doubt is still there.
Exactly. And that seed of doubt, I think it'll only grow as technology keeps advancing. Take AI, for example. It's getting so good at mimicking human behavior. I mean, we've got AI writing text, composing music, even creating art. And it's getting hard to tell the difference between AI and human work.
So you're saying this Twitter ghost It could have been like an early example of AI going rogue.
It's possible, though. I mean, in this specific case, there's no evidence pointing to that. But it does make you wonder, right? As AI gets even smarter, could it start to blur the lines even more? The lines between the living and this digital afterlife. Think about it, an AI that studied everything about a person's online life, their writing style, the way they think, their memories, everything. Could it eventually create content that's so convincing, so them, that it really feels like they're still present in that digital world?
Okay, now that's both, like incredibly cool and kind of creepy all at the same time.
Absolutely. And it just highlights these ethical questions, right? These big questions we need to be thinking about as technology advances. How do we use these tools responsibly, with respect, especially when we're talking about life and death?
It's like we're navigating completely uncharted territory here,
Yeah.
and the map's being drawn as we go.
Mm-hmm.
But these questions, they're not just hypothetical anymore. I mean, look at how digital hauntings are showing up in our culture. All these horror movies and shows about tech and the supernatural.
Oh, for sure. That idea of tech being this like bridge to the afterlife, it definitely resonates with people. And it goes beyond just entertainment, too. You've got ghost hunting apps, people holding virtual seances.
Wow, really?
Oh, yeah. And even those trying to use AI to contact loved ones who have passed away.
It's like the paranormal has gone fully digital. But it's not always about, actively trying to find ghosts or spirits, is it? It feels like it's also about holding on to those memories, those connections to people we've lost, even if it's in this digital space.
That's a really interesting point. I think you're right. With these digital hauntings, a lot of times it comes back to that basic human need for connection, for a sense that things continue even after death. And in a world where our digital footprint, it can last forever, I mean, it's natural to wonder if a part of us, some echo, sticks around in that digital realm.
And think about VR and AR. Those technologies are getting better and better at creating these immersive experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Those echoes, they could become even more, real, more present.
Right. Imagine putting on a VR headset and suddenly you're in a virtual world with, like, digital versions of people who are gone, or just walking through your own house and having this augmented reality experience where you feel like your deceased loved one is right there with you.
Okay, now that's both amazing and, yeah, a little terrifying to think about.
It is. It really brings up some serious ethical considerations like consent, authenticity. What happens to someone's psychology when the line between being alive and this digital afterlife gets so blurred, especially in such a powerful, in-your-face way?
And then there's deepfakes. We're already seeing how real those fake videos can look. What happens when that tech gets so good that you can have a whole video call with a digital version of someone who's passed on?
That opens a whole new can of worms, ethically speaking. How do we make sure that technology is used in the right way, respectfully, without taking advantage of people's grief or creating false memories?
It's a lot to think about. It really does feel like, I don't know, like we're writing this whole new chapter in the story of ghost stories. But the ghosts are, digital, and the setting is the internet, which is always changing.
And I think just like those classic ghost stories, these digital ones, they often act as a kind of warning. They remind us that whenever we push technology forward, there are always these ethical questions, these unintended consequences that come with it.
So where do we even go from here? What does it all mean for us, as we're living more and more of our lives in this digital world?
Well, I think it really highlights how important digital literacy is, that critical thinking.
Right.
As we're putting more trust in technology, we need to be aware of the downsides, the ways it can be manipulated, the ways it can, even deceive us.
It's like we need to develop this healthy skepticism, not be afraid of tech, but engage with it in a smart way.
Exactly. Don't just accept everything you see or hear online as fact, especially when it comes to these paranormal stories. Question what you're seeing. Consider other explanations. Sometimes the scariest experiences have perfectly normal explanations.
So next time you get that weird text or hear something strange in a recording or see something off in a photo, don't jump to conclusions right away.
Right. Could just be a glitch, Tech works sometimes, but then again, maybe not. And that's what keeps us hooked on these digital hauntings, that uncertainty.
It's like that feeling you get when you peek into a dark room,
Right.
not knowing what you'll find. Sends chills down your spine, but you still want to look. We want to believe, even if it means questioning everything we thought we knew.
And I think as that line between the physical and digital, the living and the gone, as that line gets blurrier, those chills, they're going to get harder to shake off.
It's a fascinating thought to end on, even if it is a little unnerving. As our digital selves and our real selves, as they get more intertwined, what's it going to be like to live in a world where those digital echoes, the people we've lost, can still reach out and touch us? And until next time, keep those devices close, but maybe keep an eye on them too.